Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on another Ask the Expert. Today, we commemorate Panic Awareness Day, and our theme for today is Don't Let Panic Make Your World Smaller. Today, we have an array of amazing guests, and our very first guest today is one of our all time favorites, Dr. Kalinda Linda. Dr. Kalinda Linda is a clinical psychologist who has been in private practice since 1993, specializing in cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, for anxiety disorders, sleep issues, stress, and burnout. She is the founder of the CBT Group and the creator of South Africa's only CBT self help site to date, Thoughts First, which reflects her passion for self help and empowering the public. Kalinda has also been involved with SEDEX since 1999 as an advisory board member and the director, and is currently a SEDEX board chairperson. Welcome, Kalinda. Thank you so much for always being part of these really important conversations, and also one of our favorite people when it comes to talking anything panic. We're so excited to have you on today.
Well, as you said, panic is one of my favorite things in the world, and people at this point might be thinking, are you crazy? But hopefully about an hour from now, they'll be looking at it a bit differently.
Absolutely. And as much as we know how you love to talk about panic, and it's one of your favorite things to talk about, we couldn't think about anybody better to talk about it. We often get calls about panic and anxiety, and one of the biggest or most asked questions is, what is the difference between someone experiencing a panic attack and an acute stress response? What is your answer to that?
That is such a good question to start with, because I get asked that question as well. Okay, so they can look identical from the outside, and this is why it's so confusing, but there's a very big difference. So when there is something, say somebody almost drives into your car, or the alarm goes off, or, you drop something important, a crisis like that, there's actually a thing over here. So that is an acute stress response, and it's, this shocking thing happened, okay? And so it makes sense given the situation, and when the danger has passed, your body will settle. Now, a panic attack is different. So it is still your fight or flight. It is still your body's alarm system, but there's no actual danger to respond to. So the sensations are just as real. Your heart's going crazy, you're struggling to breathe, you've got this feeling in your stomach, but there's no actual trigger in the environment. And so this mismatch also makes a panic attack even more scary, because your body is saying emergency, but you can't find one. So that's quite important to understand. Because if we know what the difference is, then we can start, okay, how do I do the recovery? And it's very different what you do with an acute stress reaction and panic disorder.
And so you mentioned something in your answer. You said your heart's going crazy. And so many people describe their very first panic attack as feeling like they are having a heart attack or a medical emergency. What is actually happening in the mind and the body during a panic attack?
Okay, so we all have a survival instinct. We call it the threat system, the threat response system, fight or flight. We've all heard those terms. And this has been there for millions of years to keep us alive. And basically it switches on when it thinks there's a threat. So the primitive brain gets the message there's a threat. So the amygdala starts, it sounds the alarm. And so you have adrenaline going through your body. And if there really were a fight or flight situation, this would make sense, wouldn't it? So yes. You would need adrenaline, you would need your heart to go quicker to pump all of that. You would need to be breathing more, to get the oxygen, to fuel the cells. You'd need to be doing all of that. So your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure goes up, your breathing becomes rapid, shallow, blood moves away from the torso, it moves to your muscles for the fighting and the flighting. And the most important thing is that the primitive brain takes over. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down. So you can think about it as if the security is saying, run, there's a fire in the building, but the chair and the board are trying to have a board meeting and there's no fire that you can see. So in a real fight or flight, the primitive brain will shut down completely and you'll be completely just instinctive. You won't really be thinking, you'll do what you have to do. In a panic attack, what makes it worse is you're not fighting or flighting. You normally are frozen, or you're just moving around, but you're not fighting or flighting. And the primitive brain is half shut down and half on. And the prefrontal cortex, your board of directors, is half on, half off. So there's this massive confusion. There's a threat, get away. No, there isn't. Yes, there is. And what's terrifying is the sensations going through your body. Now, why most people feel that this could be a heart attack is because your heart's going crazy. You have this blood pressure going up. You've got this whooshing sound in your ears. You get pain in your chest, sometimes in the left arm. And that is all really because you are hyperventilating, but your oxygen and CO2 is out, which is why you can't breathe nicely or you subjectively feel that. And what happens is you're breathing in too much oxygen. So the CO2 that's waiting to get out into, the tissues and so on, or the CO2 sitting in the tissue, it's waiting to leave, and the oxygen's in your lungs waiting to get out and circulate. And then everything gets stuck because you're breathing. It's not dangerous, but it goes out. The oxygen CO2 goes out. So there's too much CO2 in your intercostal muscles in your chest. And so the cells go into anaerobic respiration. The byproduct of that is lactic acid, so you get a cramp. Now, this is just one example of if you know what's going on, it is not a heart attack. A heart attack feels different. You'd have a different kind of pressure. It would feel completely different. But, of course, we're going to be thinking, my body's going crazy, I'm having a medical emergency. And this is why knowledge is so important. That's a very long answer, but I think people need to know what's really going on.
I think that that's such an important answer, because for someone who's experiencing it for the very first time, it must be so scary, so overwhelming and frightening. And you already answered one of my other questions as to why it feels so intense, right? But how can we now respond to it differently? How do we respond to it in terms of this may just be a panic attack? How do I calm myself down? How do people learn to respond to it differently when it happens?
Well, I think the first thing is we need to check that it is in fact a panic attack. So most people, if not all, would end up in the emergency room anyway. So you'll have your heart checked, they'll check your bloods, they'll do all of those things. And it is 100% clear if you have or haven't had a heart attack or a stroke or whatever it is you're worried about. So if you're lucky, your GP on duty will recognize that it's a panic attack and tell you what it is and send you to SADAG and maybe give you some meds if you've been going through a lot of stress. If you're not lucky, you may not get told what it is. Oh, you're fine, go home. Or sometimes you get told it's a panic attack. What does that mean? And will it happen again? So the very first thing to do is you need to have knowledge. So I suggest everybody gets on the SADAG website because knowledge is power. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing would be, in the middle of a panic attack, there are certain strategies. Shall we talk about those?
Yes, please, Kulinda, please.
So in the middle of a panic attack, distraction is the best thing you can do. Because I'll explain later about what's happening with the mind and the body. But basically, you've got this fight or flight going off, and the thoughts of threat, this is dangerous, are feeding the sensations. We can talk more about that. But basically, if you can distract yourself for 2 to 4 minutes, it can often just reset you. So distraction would actually be the first thing. It is a quick fix, but that's quite helpful. The second thing would be the breath. Now, when you're in a full panic attack, you're not going to be able to do this yourself, probably. And this is where SADAG comes into it, because there's always a very calm, steady voice on the other end. But if you're with someone who's having a panic attack, get the breath under control. So I'm going to demonstrate one now. So we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 2, and breathe out for at least 6 seconds. You want the long exhale because that triggers the vagus nerve, that calms everything down. So we'll do one together. So breathing in through the nose for 4, hold for 2, and out through the mouth for 6. So it's not a big one in and a big one out. It's always a much longer breath out. Otherwise, it's not going to reset you. And if you've got something to squeeze, you could squeeze and breathe in. Pause and then a long exhale as you release. So literally doing 5 of those is going to arrest a panic attack. But if you're in the middle of that crisis and you've got the primitive brain screaming at you and you don't know what's going on, it's very, very difficult to do that yourself. So then a distraction would be the other thing. You know that there's that thing about what 5 things can you see, what 4 things can you touch, etc. But again, you're not going to think that in the panic attack. So have it written somewhere so that, it's a panic attack. So those are just some things you can do.
Linda, for people that don't know about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I would love for you to actually please go through it so that they can actually, while they are watching this today on Panic Awareness Day, write it down somewhere. Please go through it with them.
Okay. So if you think it's using your senses, and I in fact change the order whenever I say it. So I would put up your hand and say, okay, 5. What 5 things can I see? Okay, there, and you label, you say out loud, these are the 5 things I can see. Okay, what 4 things can I touch? I'm touching this, touching that. Okay. What 3 things can you hear? You can hear the birds, I can hear a car, I can hear something. What 2 things can you smell? Can I smell anything? And then maybe what can I taste? Okay. So what that's doing is you working with your senses, but not what's happening in my body. It's outside of the body. So mindfulness of the sensations is not what you should be doing at that time. Get out of your body. That helps much, much more. And it doesn't matter what order you do them in. I don't know if you could taste 5 things. That probably should come near the end. But what you can see or touch, so not feel, but touch and hear, those are the big ones. And you can see then we're bringing you out of that loop. So you're outside of that what's happening kind of loop, and you're engaging your prefrontal because you're naming and you're thinking. So that helps very quickly.
And I think those are just some of the practical techniques that people can use when they feel that panic rising.
Yes.
So, you've managed to talk about some of these techniques that can help calm the nervous system. But many people start changing their routines after a panic attack, and I think it's important to ask the question, why can panic make people withdraw from situations that they once enjoyed? How does it affect their lives over time?
I think that's also an extremely pertinent question, and it happens most cases. So this is what we call agoraphobia, where your world shrinks and you just don't feel safe leaving your home. And there is a small percentage of people who feel unsafe if they're alone at home, but most people will feel unsafe here. And then we have support, our cell phone and, whatever medication or water. So we start having all these cues that make us feel safe. Now, a panic attack itself is here, but then we have what we call a fear of fear cycle. And this is where you're sitting in your house, and what the brain does is it starts to analyze. That awful thing happened when I was out in that mall. I shouldn't go to busy places. Or it happened when I was on that road. I shouldn't be in traffic. And then it starts to make links. And then we have the word avoidance. So when you think anxiety, think avoidance. So the fear of fear cycle is where you're so scared you might have another one, that you avoid all and anything that could possibly trigger another one. And then that is when avoidance seems to be a very good idea. And the world shrinks. Now, the example that I give is, it's almost the opposite of phobia. So say if today a dog bit you, particular dog, and a week from now you see another dog altogether, but it's kind of similar looking, then you avoid that dog too. And you can see where that will spiral, and eventually you're just avoiding all dogs, even little poodles. And panic and agoraphobia work the same, that you sit there and you think, I have to make sure I never feel that again. Okay, it was that busy place. But then maybe say church, oh, that's also busy. Or, whatever one's place of worship is. Or work, a big work meeting, that's also too busy. So can you see how that starts to build? And this is where the fear of fear actually becomes panic disorder. It's one of the criteria for a panic attack becoming panic disorder.
And it just becomes a cycle, right? A cycle that people find very hard to break. And so I think that leads me to a really important question. Many people don't know about cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, and they don't know what it involves. So how can CBT help someone better understand their panic and how to regain that confidence in taking back their everyday life and their independence in their everyday life?
Well, I think the first thing is you learn to panic, and so you can unlearn. Okay, so I want people to sit with that for a moment. So whatever you learn, you can unlearn. Okay, so that's important. I think of little kids. One of my nephews used to say crocodile instead of crocodile. And we thought it was very cute, but when he went to school, he had to unlearn. And we're unlearning things all the time, relearning. So that's the most important thing. And CBT begins with what we call psychoeducation. So we take a good hour to analyze it together, to explain the model. This is what's happening. This is how your thoughts are fueling the sensations. This is how the first one happened. This is how the fear of fear happened. This is avoidance. This is how we were treated. So we start there. And then what we do is we look at the thoughts. So that's cognitions and the beliefs. Oh, I'm going to die. I'm definitely going to die. And then, for example, you would explain, well, survival instinct, fight or flight, and panic are three names for one reflex, which is your survival instinct. And so therefore, your survival instinct is not going to kill you. And that means fight or flight, panic also can't kill you. That would be a bit of a design error, wouldn't it? So, we explain things like that. We explain what is exactly going on. If somebody's got other anxieties, but what if I'm on the road and then I can't stop, or I'm in the mall and I can't get away? So we look at all of that, and we look at a more rational alternative and reality test the thinking. And then the behavioral part comes. And it depends on what kind of CBT you're doing. So some people would just do a graded exposure. I was trained in the original CBT, David Barlow's methods. So there's a technique called interoceptive deconditioning. Basically, it's just breaking the link between scary sensations and thoughts that I'm going to die. And there's a very particular way of doing that. And so we basically desensitize the person from those physical sensations, and then we gently, with all the safety cues that they need, be it a person, be it me, be it someone on the phone, be it their water bottle, and then we gradually get them to start exposing to the things that they're scared of. And it's unique. So we would listen to what the person's, or where the panic manifests. Do they feel more scared alone? Do they feel more scared when they're out or when they're at home, or, etc.? And then we would dismantle it like that, piece by piece. So it is science-based, which I think is also quite nice to know. And we know exactly what's happening in the brain, and also then how to reverse the conditioning, because it's a conditioned fear. So it's a gentle process of reconditioning. And that's what you would do with any anxiety.
I think that's amazing. It's something that a lot of people don't know. And I think today they've learned a lot more about CBT and how it actually works and what's involved. So, Dr. Linda, today on Panic Awareness Day with the theme, Don't Let Panic Make Your World Smaller, what message would you like to share with someone whose life has become a little bit smaller because of panic and who is struggling to believe that recovery actually is possible?
Right. So I think the first thing is that whatever you learned, you can unlearn and relearn. If you forget everything else I said, it's a learned, conditioned fear. You can relearn. You might be thinking, but I'm sitting at this end where I can't do anything by myself. I can't leave the house. And we would literally start with one step. So it would be go to your front door and open the door. Okay, tomorrow, take a step out of the house. The next day, maybe walk a few steps down, to the end of the garden or the driveway or down the stairs. And so if it has to be that small, it has to be that small. And remember, humans have a remarkable ability to learn. Imagine if a baby gave up, so it was learning to walk, pulled itself up, and then fell down and then decided, that's it, I'm done. You're carrying me forever. We're not like that. We've all learned to dress ourselves. We've all learned to speak, to eat, to write, walk, run, do many things. But you can't run before you can walk, and you can't walk before you crawl. So it would be to be realistic. So half of it would be, panic is very well known. We know exactly what to do with it with CBT. It's very, very fixable. Really, it is. 99% of the time, it's gone forever. And if you ever should have an anxiety in the future, you'll be, I know what that is. It's like when you've watched the making of a horror movie, you know what it is. And so you will learn. The feeling is real, but the alarm is false. So lots and lots of learning. And then again, just to be patient. You didn't get the fear overnight. It developed to where you are now. Your world shrunk slowly, and you will grow it and get it back, gently as well. There's no need to rush. One step at a time, but it will happen. And me and analogies and metaphors, if anyone's ever had a leak, and you put a bucket there and you think, it's okay, it'll be there for about 5 hours. No, drip, 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 and soon it'll be full. Well, this is the same. One step, one step, one step, one step. Got my life back. And it happens every time. Promise.
Thank you, Dr. Linda. And so you've all heard it from the expert. Whatever you have learned, you can unlearn and you can get your life back. So thank you so much, Dr. Linda, for again giving us your time. And thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Ask the Expert, Dr. Linda.
It's such a pleasure. And thank you for all the work SADAG does.
Thank you. Next on our Ask the Expert, we have Marsha Stanley. Marsha Stanley is a proud mom of 3 with 16 years of teaching experience and a passion for helping students grow in confidence and ability. She currently teaches Polish students creating engaging and supportive English lessons tailored to their needs. Having lived with anxiety for the past 11 years and being diagnosed with panic disorder last year, she brings empathy, patience, and understanding to her teaching, creating a positive and encouraging learning environment for every student. Marsha is also a member of one of our many support groups that SADAG runs. Marsha, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Marsha, I would like you to just take us back to one of your very first panic attacks. What did it feel like and what was going through your mind at the time?
The first time I experienced a panic attack was way back in 2017. Now, I often get asked what triggered my first panic attack, and I believe greatly that it is very unique for each person. For me, it was a very overwhelming time in my life with a lot of circumstances that contributed to it. I remember the first time it happened, I don't think I was even aware that I was experiencing a panic attack. I never knew the symptoms or what to look out for. At that point, my mind and my body completely went into fight and flight mode. I honestly thought something serious was happening to me and that I was going to die. Physically, I had a sensation of not being able to breathe. My throat felt like it was closing in. My heart rate raced. I was nauseous. I was sweaty with chest pains. My only thought at that point was, I need to get myself to a hospital.
Okay. And at what point did you realize that what you were experiencing was more than stress or anxiety? And how did you eventually get the help and the answers that you need? And how did you actually get yourself to that hospital? Because from what we've been hearing from everyone, it's not easy to actually get yourself to the hospital. So how did you get to the hospital?
I think for me, it was the matter of the amounts of times I got rushed to the emergency room or the emergency care. Luckily, most of those times I had a close by family member or friend that was able to take me. Obviously, I was I was not in a condition to drive myself. Especially when, I think where I came to the conclusion, or when I was guaranteed that against all odds, that physically I was healthy, then I kind of realized that I need help. What I am experiencing is not normal. I was then admitted to hospital for the first time in, I think, 2022 or 2023, where a psychiatrist came to see me and asked me if I would consider to voluntarily book myself into a clinic for a few days. And then at the clinic, I worked with my psychiatrist, my psychologist, occupational therapist, and also a life coach that I had numerous counseling sessions with.
Marsha, did panic ever come, or did it ever get to a point where panic began affecting your daily life, your relationships, the things you once enjoyed? Did it ever get to a point where you weren't able to go shopping by yourself, do your grocery shopping, drive a car? Were you scared to go out by yourself? Did panic ever start to affect your daily life like that?
Oh, absolutely. It has affected many areas of my life. I was no longer able to be with other people in big crowds. The fear of the what ifs was just too big for me. What if something happens to me? What if I get an anxiety or panic attack in this crowd of people, in front of people? It would be so embarrassing. Small things such as household chores, family dinners, work. It was no longer something that I was able to do without feeling that it was extremely challenging. And I mean, I couldn't not work because financially it was just not possible for me to not work. Even a 40-minute drive to visit my parents would result in me having at least 2 panic attacks in the car. Driving and being stuck in traffic was also one of my bigger triggers. It would make me feel as though I'm suffocating in the car. What if I get a panic attack while I am driving? I was unable to go out on family outings with my children and my husband. And I believe that if I stay in bed, nothing would happen to me. It was at first very hard for my husband and my children to fully understand what I was experiencing, but eventually they were able to identify my symptoms and knew what to look out for to help me through it each time that I had a panic attack.
And what has helped you most in learning to manage your panic and regain confidence in your daily life now?
I think what has helped me tremendously was my support system. And taking that first step into acknowledging that I need help, doing a lot of research, reading up on different techniques, tips on how to manage a panic attack. Something as simple as rubbing Vicks under my nose was one of the many tips or hacks that I've read up on. Other than, for example, the 5-4-3-2-1 technique, the grounding technique. There's so many ways, just to name a few. But I think also working together with my medical professionals, it has really given me the opportunity to take back or to function again as a mother, to function again in my daily activities, in my role at work, knowing that I was going to be okay. And the reassurance of being safe is what gave me the confidence to start living again.
I love what you've just said, because it leads me to my next question, to take back your power. So what would you say to someone whose world has become a little bit smaller because of panic and who may be struggling to believe that things can get better and that they can take back their power? What would you say to them?
I think reach out. Never be ashamed to reach out and to build a support system. I think if our loved ones and the medical professionals that we have working on our cases, know what we are or understand what we are experiencing, then it's also easier for them to assist us when we do have a panic attack. I always remind myself that I've survived 100% of my worst days, and I will survive the next panic attack too. Acknowledge your feelings and emotions with every panic attack, because those are the ones that you would need to focus on the next time you have a panic attack and improve on. And identify the next time that you might have a panic attack. Identify, I'm having this panic attack, but this is how I'm going to handle it differently. Our minds is sometimes our biggest prison, or we can also use it as our biggest weapon. And it can teach our bodies that we are stronger than the next panic attack. We are safe and we are going to be okay.
I love that message, and it's a message that has been carried throughout today's Ask the Expert, that we've learned this panic and we can unlearn it. And so thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so grateful for the message that you have given us, and thank you for your time. Thank you so much, Marsha, for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Our next amazing expert on this Panic Awareness Day is Dr. Seleme Malato, a clinical psychologist with 26 years of experience in private practice based on Rivonia Road in Sandton. Her interest groups include adolescents, youth, and adults. She takes an integrative therapeutic approach combining CBT, systems therapy, and African therapeutic practices to create a personalized treatment plan tailored to each client's individual needs. Her areas of specialized interest include mood disorders, grief, trauma and violence, substance abuse, and employee wellness, amongst others. She is also an LGBTQI+ inclusive therapist who advocates for gender diversity and equality. She provides an affirmative, non-judgmental, and ethically safe space for gender minorities. I beg your pardon. Welcome, Dr. Malato. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. And how are you, Roshni?
I'm okay. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence today and on our very special Panic Awareness Day with the theme, Don't Let Panic Make Your World Smaller. I think our very first question that we want to ask you is that, panic disorder is often very, very misunderstood. And what some of the things that people commonly get wrong is a lot about panic and what panic attacks are. So what I want to ask you is, what are the things that people commonly get wrong about panic and what panic attacks are?
Thanks for having me, Roshni. Yes, panic attacks are more often misconceived precisely because of lack of knowledge. So if people do not know, they normally make assumptions. So I think generally the first thing that people think when somebody's having a panic attack is they're having a heart attack, which might be true, because a panic attack sometimes mimics a heart attack, because the person would say that their heart is beating faster, I cannot breathe, and they could actually be clutching on the side of their heart. That's why people would think it's a heart attack. Sometimes, even if there are no fainting spells, people will think that somebody might be having a seizure. It might be a seizure, they're going to faint. But I think of concern is how people sometimes feel that people struggling with panic disorders are weak. They feel like it's because they can't handle stress, they're not strong enough, and all of those things. Or people might think that the only way in which you could treat panic attacks is through medication. Yeah, so those are some of the misconceptions.
And to go off that, as a family member and a loved one, how do we support someone who is experiencing a panic attack without unintentionally reinforcing that fear or that avoidance? How do we as family members support them?
It's a good question, especially if it's for the first time that the family is experiencing a member with a panic attack. The first thing they want to do is to just freak out. So I think of importance is to remember as a family member to stay calm, because this person here is struggling, they're freaking out, they are very scared. Now, if you were to be scared with this person, it's actually not going to help. So if the members remember just to stay calm and maybe to start saying, reassuring them, look, you're getting this attack, but it's going to be fine. It makes a difference. It's unlike when this person is having an attack and everybody's scared and nobody actually remembers to reassure the person that is having an attack. You need to reassure them that they are safe. You might want to maybe move them, walk them into maybe an airy space. We might be in an enclosed room, so maybe walk them outside. Walk them outside, and most importantly, encourage the person to breathe. You might not even know what box breathing is. You might not know the three rules, but just ask them to slowly breathe. It goes a long way.
And I think the best way that we can learn all of these things, how to stay calm, how to calm them down, how to calm ourselves down, is to gain more knowledge, to read more books, to find more resources, websites. Are there any books, resources, websites, or tools that you would recommend for people, for loved ones, for family members who want to better understand panic and to learn healthy coping strategies? What would you recommend for us to find? Where would we find it?
Okay, my apologies. There are two that I could recommend. One, it's a website. It's called Psych Central. Psych Central would offer even the lay person who do not know a panic attack. They have these worksheets where they would say, if somebody is having a panic attack, this is what you could do. And then there's an app called Calm. Calm is very effective in teaching ourselves how to breathe, especially when one is having a panic attack and you are the family member. How do you learn to breathe before you can help the other person to try and breathe and calm themselves out of their attack?
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful, Doctor. So we all know that panic disorder is considered highly treatable. What does the recovery look like, and what can people realistically expect when they begin treatment?
I think one thing for sure is just being honest and open with a patient that a panic attack might come again. We need to start there. We need to be honest and say it might come again. And secondly, the patient needs to understand that it's not like there's medication and you're going to be okay. Therapy is very gradual. So it's a process. So it's going to take a couple of sessions. And one needs to understand that even if the episodes just doesn't disappear, the therapy is the one that's going to skill you. Because what happens is once somebody experiences a panic attack, they stay fearing this happening again. Anticipatory thoughts where they say, what if it happens again? And that in itself, that fear might trigger another attack. So in therapy, that's where people learn how to actually restructure their cognition, to think differently, and to know all the other strategies that, for an example, CBT might offer in helping them, one, understand the condition. And it's only when they understand the condition that you can be able to assist them in learning all the skills that they need to be able to, because even though we might have a panic attack once or twice in our lives, for some people it happens so repeatedly that if it's not taken care of, it might develop into some other thing. It might be develop into a fully blown anxiety disorder or a depressive disorder or so forth and so forth. So we need to try and control it so that even if somebody's predisposed, we can teach them how to control it to a point that it doesn't get worse and bring them other disorders that they might have to deal with in their lives.
So, doctor, you've been saying so many things and talking about so many symptoms today, and there may be someone who may be recognizing their own experiences in today's conversation. What would you encourage them to do next?
The first thing that is helpful when you're experiencing a panic attack is to name it, to acknowledge there's something that's happening, I'm panicking. Because you want to say, oh, what's happening? Can I have a glass of water? And all of that just exacerbates the panic. So when you acknowledge this is what is happening, and what we do when we experience a panic attack, we go into tension, we tense up. So we clench everything. The first thing that we clench is our jaw. So unclench your jaw. Just try and loosen your body. I don't know whether I can be in the camera. There's a strategy that I normally teach, which is just doing this. Just shaking like your hands like that. It slows up the pace of your heart because remember your heart is racing. And I use a slice of lemon. I normally say because lemon is just so sour, it shocks your nervous system, and then the nervous system calms down. Because panic is actually from a nervous system point of view. There's then an ice cube. Some people they just rub the ice cube in their arms. Others they suck on an ice cube, and the aim is just to make sure that we decrease the heart rate, because that is where the complications might arise from.
I love that. You've given us so many practical techniques to calm us down when we're going through that panic. So, Dr. Malato, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a very nice, lovely conversation. We've loved having you today on our Ask the Expert. I am so grateful for you today, and we love having another conversation with you soon. So thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Malato.
Thank you so much, Roshni, and thank you for having me. I hope it was well worth it for people that are going to be watching, and have a good day further.
Thank you for joining us for today's Ask the Expert session. To learn more, visit SEDEG's website, where you can access mental health toolkits, articles, support groups, previous webinar recordings, and information on SEDEG's programs and services. You can also watch Zane's lived experience story on our YouTube channel. If you need support, please call the SEDEG helpline on 0800 70 80 90 or WhatsApp 087 163 2025 to speak to a counselor. Today's session was recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. Please follow SEDEG on social media to stay updated on future sessions and resources.